In this tutorial, I want to talk to you about working with numbers in Python. Now, numbers are one of the most common data types in Python, and any Python program you write is most likely going to be dealing with numbers at some point. So I want to talk to you guys about just the basics of using numbers. We're going to talk about the different types of numbers that we can represent in Python. And I also want to show you guys some awesome functions that we can use with numbers. So we can do certain like mathematical operations. We can do some awesome things with numbers. And I'm going to show you guys all of that in this video. It's going to be awesome. So first thing we can do is we can actually just like print out a number. So if I want to write a number in Python, it's really easy. I basically just write the number. So I could say like print 2, and this is just going to print the number 2 out onto the screen. So I can use a whole number like this. I could also use a decimal number. So I could say like 2.0987. And Python's going to be just fine with that. We'll be able to print that out onto the screen as well. I can also make numbers negative. So I could make this 2.0987 a negative number, and Python will be able to handle that just fine too. In Python, we can also use basic arithmetic. So I could do things like addition, subtraction, multiplication. So I could say like 3 plus 4. And now this is going to print this out. Or why don't we say like 3 plus 4.5. And this will be able to print out the answer. So we get 7.5. And we can do addition, we could do subtraction, we could do division, or we could do like multiplication as well. So you can pretty much do whatever you want inside of Python. And if you want to make more complex mathematical equations, we can also use things to specify order of operations. So I could use parentheses. So for example, if I said 3 times 4 plus 5, what Python's going to do is it's going to multiply 3 and 4 together. So it's going to be 12, and then we'll add 5 to that. So we should get 17. But let's say that we wanted to change up the order, right? I could actually put a parentheses around 4 and 5. And now it's going to add them first, so it'll add 4 and 5, so we'll get 9, and we'll multiply that times 3, so we should end up with 27. So you can see we can use those parentheses to specify order of operations. So I could make like a very complex little equation here just by using numbers and parentheses. We can also use one other operation, which is called the modulus operator. So I could say like 10 and use this percent sign 3, and this is actually read 10 mod 3. And basically what this is going to do is it's going to take the first number, divide it by the second number, and it's going to spit out the remainder. So it's basically going to say, okay, 10 divided by 3, that's going to be 3 with a remainder of 1. And so this is going to give us the remainder. And you'll see down here we get 1 because that's the remainder of 10 divided by 3. And that modulus operator can come in handy quite a bit. We can also store these numbers inside of variables. So we can store them inside of these variable containers. So I could come over here and I could create a variable called like my underscore num, and we'll just store a value of, let's say like 5 in here. And so I could come down here and I can just print out my underscore num, and we'll be able to print that number out to the screen just fine. So in addition to doing things like the basic arithmetic, we can also do some other stuff. So one thing I could do is I could actually convert this number into a string. So if I wanted to convert this number into a string, I can just say str, and I can put the number that I want to convert inside of these parentheses. And so what's going to happen now is this number is going to be converted into a string. So when I click the run button, you'll see it's just printing out 5, but now instead of being a number, this is actually a string. And this is going to come in handy when you want to print out numbers alongside strings. So I can come over here and I can say like my favorite number, and we'll be able to print this number along with this string. So I can click play and it says 5, my favorite number. If I was to get rid of this string right here and I wasn't converting the number into a string, now Python's going to have a problem with this. It's not going to allow us to do that. You can see we get an error. So anytime you want to print out a number next to a string, you got to make sure that you use that little string function. So there's a bunch of other stuff that we can do with numbers, and a lot of times in Python you're going to want to be using specific like more advanced math operators. So there's a bunch of different math functions that we can use on our numbers. And a function is basically just like a little collection of code that does something. So a function could perform an operation like a mathematical operation on our number. It could also give us information about our number. So I'm going to show you guys some of the most common functions that you'll be using in Python related to numbers. The first one is called ABS, and it stands for absolute value. So we can get the absolute value of a number. And so over here, I'm just going to make this variable -5. And basically, I can just say ABS, and I can make an open and close parentheses over here. And this is going to give me the absolute value of this number up here. So when I click the play button, you'll see it's just giving us 5, because 5 is the absolute value of -5. I can use a few other functions. There's another one which is called POW. It's just POW. And I'm actually not going to use this variable. We just use a normal number. And this function is going to allow us to pass it 2 pieces of information. So I can give this function 2 pieces of information. The first is going to be like a number, and the second is going to be the power that I want to take that number to. So I could say like 3, 2, and this is basically just going to be 3 raised to the power of 2. So it's just going to be 3 squared, so we should get 9 down here. You can see that we do. So I could pass in like, you know, some crazy number, like we could pass in a 4 and we could raise it to the power of 6. And so we should get like a pretty big number here. And you can see we get 4,096. So this POW function is really useful for taking numbers to specific powers. So in addition to using this POW function, we can also use another function which is called max. So I can say max, and what this is going to do is it's basically going to return the larger of the 2 numbers that we pass into it. So right now I'm giving this a 4 and a 6, and this should tell us which number is higher. So over here it's just printing out 6 because that's the bigger number. I can also use another function called min, and this is going to do the opposite. So now instead of printing out the max number, it's going to print out the smallest number, and it's going to print out 4 down here, as you can see. Another cool function is called the round function, and this is going to allow us to round a number. So it's just going to follow like standard rounding rules. So if I said like 3.2 inside of here, now it's going to round it down to just normal 3. But if I said like 3.7, it's going to round it up to 4. So that'll allow you to round a number. So there's a few other functions that I want to show you guys, but in order to get access to them, I'm actually going to have to do something called importing. And in Python, we can actually import external code into our files. And so if I want to access these specific math functions, I have to import something called Python math. So I can just say from up here, math, import, and this star. And basically what this is going to do is it's going to go out and it's going to grab a bunch of different math functions that we can use. So I already showed you guys a few of these different math functions, but there's actually a bunch more. And in order to access them, we're going to need to include this line of code inside of our file. So once we have that, now I can access a few others. So there's another function which is called the floor method, and it's just floor. And what this will do is it'll basically just grab the lowest number. So it's essentially just going to chop off this decimal point. And you can see over here now we get a 3 because we're using that floor function. There's also another one called ceil, and that's just going to do the exact opposite. So that's just going to round the number up no matter what. So no matter what, we'll always get 4 if we have a 3 point whatever here. And there's another one which is called square root. So it's just sqrt. And essentially this is just going to return the square root of a number. So I could say like 36, and now we should get 6 back. So those are all some very interesting functions. And inside of this math module, so we would call this a module, and you don't have to worry too much about what that is right now. Just know that when we put this line of code into our program, it gives us access to a lot more math functions. So it basically allows us to do a lot more things with math inside of our program. And there's a bunch of different math functions in Python. And if you want, you can basically just go online and search for different math functions. I showed you guys a few here, and I would say the ones that we looked at here are probably the most commonly used, but there's a bunch more. And like I said, you know, there's tons tons of documentation on all of this stuff. So you can just look up, math functions in Python, and there's going to be tons and tons, like lists of these things that you can use inside of your programs to perform different math operations. But for now, that's just been a little bit about using numbers, a little bit about doing, certain math operations and using functions